Hey everyone, this is Miss Valentine, and you are watching the Forest Management Techniques and Wildfires Notes, also known as the Forestry Notes in AP Environmental Science. So today we're going to talk about forests in general and then the importance of wildfires, which is just one aspect of sustaining terrestrial ecosystems. This is one of the major topics within your Chapter 10 reading this week. When we talk about forests, we are looking at it from a number of different angles, including wildlife habitat, so the ecosystem itself within a forest. We're looking at forest regeneration, how a forest replaces the vegetation that is within the forest. Resource protection, so protecting it as a resource not only for the ecosystem itself, but also for our own human use and the ecosystem services that it provides. And that gets to timber value, which is one of the primary things that we use forests for is timber. And so we're going to watch a short video and explore some of the ideas associated with cutting down and managing forests as well. So we'll talk about a few different types of cutting trees that are studied in forestry. So silviculture is a technical term for how you cut down and manage forests. So you guys are going to see silviculture throughout this presentation. So a silvicultural clear cut is just removing all the trees in one cutting. And this is one of the most damaging results for an ecosystem. It causes a lot of evaporation from the soil, takes out a lot of moisture, exposes the surface for soil erosion and wind erosion. So this is often a type of silviculture or forestry that you don't want to see. There's selective cutting, which is more commonly known as thinning out of a forest, and there's two different methods to do that. So some foresters will thin from above. They'll go from the largest trees to the smallest diameter trees until the stand of timber is about 30% stocked, or about 30% of it is left. So you're taking out the biggest trees first if you're thinning from above. If you're thinning from below, the foresters are harvesting the smallest trees first and then moving up to the diameter until about 60% of the stand is left for growth. And this will often be involved in now modern forest management, especially if you're trying to maintain old growth forests while taking out some of the fuel that might be burned in wildfires. And that is something that we'll talk about more specifically later in this presentation. So either way, selective cutting is only cutting a portion of the forest, and the approach that you take depends on whether you're going to go for the larger trees or the smaller trees in that forest. Improvement thinning is designed by a professional forester. So if you've ever walked through the woods before, sometimes you might see markings on the trees that look kind of like this, where they trim certain branches, or it may stand for cutting down an entire tree. But it's planned by a professional, someone who goes out and is considering different aspects of that forest, whether it will provide income, if it's a habitat reason, and they want to reduce the amount of timber in that area. And it just depends on the forest itself. So once again, this is something that a professional would come in and do. And it's just another type of thinning or selective cutting down some of the forest, as you can see in this picture, the before and after, taking out certain types of the forest to promote either profit or ecosystem health. Shelter wood is another form of selective cutting. So you're not cutting down the entire forest, but you take out both small and some of the larger trees. And you want those trees that are left behind to plant future trees, so to provide a future generation for that type of timber. There's often a second cut that comes along after that, after the first shelter wood process. So you can see here in this picture, they left the tall trees. Those provided some seeds for these smaller plants to start growing. And then there's generally a reassessment after that. So you can see managing forests is not super straightforward. There's lots of different strategies you have to use and employ. And this is over many months and possibly even years. So a seed tree, in the term of, what did we just call it? Shelter wood. A seed tree is where you're leaving those seeds behind. So It's like shelter wood cutting, but you have fewer trees there and you just need the seed dispersal. So you can use more of the timber as long as you leave enough for the seeds to spread around the area. Prescribed burning is something that has been employed more recently in the past decade or so as a result of the fuel buildup that has been driving a lot of these big wildfires. And again, we'll talk about that more in a little while. But if you look up here, the fuel or fuel wood that they call it sometimes is this brush dry stuff along the bottom, and when you have these mega fires coming through, they will use that fuel and end up burning all of the bigger trees. But if you do a prescribed burn where you actually go in and control the burning yourself, so they have wildland firefighters that do that, it burns up all that fuel wood and then allows for new growth to happen. So without burning out all of this old stuff, you could either have mega fires or you could end up not having new growth within that area. So it's an important part of controlling wildfires, but it's also important for regeneration and allowing other plants to start growing up. It also controls disease because you don't have as much habitat for disease vectors to be living there. And then you can also, it also helps to clear things out so that livestock can get through. They can feast much more easily in this setting than they would be able to in this setting. All right, and here we are at our video on silviculture. Once again, it's a fancy word for forest management. What you're going to do is write down as many terms as you can catch. I'd say you probably want to catch between 10 and 15 words, and then towards the end of the presentation, I'll let you know what to do with those words. You are going to be doing some definitions, but the video moves very quickly, so it's not likely that you're going to catch those definitions as we're watching the video. You'll probably have to go back and get the definitions later. All right, so let's cue up our video.
Silviculture is the art and science of managing the establishment, growth, composition, and health of forests. Stands are portions of a forest with similar characteristics, designated by easily identifiable boundaries and managed as units. A forest is a collection of stands. Therefore, forest management involves managing the stands that make up the forest. Tolerance is a term used to indicate a tree's capacity to develop and grow in competition with other trees. Trees compete with neighboring trees and plants for nutrients, light, and water. Site quality refers to the productive capacity of the site and is influenced by soil nutrients, moisture, climate, and topography. Site index is a measure of the site quality. Generally, the higher the site quality, the higher the productive capacity. Forest stands develop naturally as trees grow, reproduce, and die. Natural regeneration occurs when seeds germinate to produce seedlings, or when stumps or roots sprout, or coppice, following the removal of a hardwood tree. Even-aged stands usually occur after some disturbance in the stand that removes most or all of the overstory. Uneven-age stands have at least 3 well-defined age classes, differing in height, age, and diameter. Uneven-age stands usually develop as a result of disturbances that create favorable conditions for seeds to sprout, but do not affect the entire stand. There are a few different silviculture methods that can be chosen when managing a stand. Clear cutting occurs when the overstory is removed in one harvest. This system is used to replace old stands with new, bigger stands. The second method is called seed treatment. Here, the entire cutting unit is managed as with the clear cut method, but for a designated time period, a small number of mature trees per acre are left as a seed source for the next generation of trees. The third method is the shelterwood process. This management method generally uses 3 harvesting steps. The preparatory cut improves seed trees so they can produce a healthy cone crop. The establishment cut provides growing space for regeneration and shelter for young growing seedlings. The removal cut is the final harvest of seed trees. Uneven-aged silvicultural methods occur when individual trees or small groups of trees are harvested over relatively short intervals. This process depends on establishing reproduction and providing space for it to grow. Having a regeneration plan in advance of timber harvesting is critical to proper forest management. Natural regeneration takes advantage of existing trees growing on a site as a seed source for the next crop of trees. Artificial regeneration can occur through direct seeding or planting. Following the harvest, sites are commonly prepared for planting. Site preparation objectives generally include the removal or reduction of logging debris and slash, reducing competing vegetation, improving soil characteristics, and providing better site access for planting. Site preparation may involve multiple treatments. Prescribed fires expose mineral seed bed that's useful for natural regeneration. It can also help in controlling competing vegetation and is most effective in combination with mechanical or chemical treatments. Chopping involves rolling a heavy steel drum with cutting blades across a site to kill existing vegetation and compress woody debris. It results in a better site preparation for burning. Shearing cuts vegetation and stumps by mechanical means and is typically followed by piling or burning. Piling is also known as root raking. It is the movement of woody biomass into piles to clear the site after harvesting. Fire is often used to dispose of piled and wood road debris. Soil manipulation may occur as part of the regeneration plan of a stand. Disking is the breaking up of the soil surface to improve aeration and water movement to allow for better growth. Bedding raises the planting beds and is most often used in area with high standing water or if the surface drainage is poor. Ripping may be used where a hard pan or impervious level exists in the soil that would impede root growth. Chemical site preparation is often used to control a wide range of competing plants. The next step after site preparation is planting. Planting with containerized seedlings may begin in the fall and proceed through the winter. Best growth and survival occurs when seedlings are planted in moist soils in the late fall and winter. There are two methods of planting: machine and hand planting. In the first, a tractor pulled machine is fixed with a coulter for slicing through the soil. The next is hand planting. Individuals or planting crews use hand tools to plant seedlings. Based on site conditions, fertilization and planting may be done to improve early seedling growth.
So I don't know about you guys, but I personally can imagine the brawny man, the paper towel guy narrating that video. I forgot to mention that this is actually a training video for people that are going into silviculture or into forestry management. And it is very industrialized, you can see in the video. It has very technical terms, and you could see even people out there planting. That is something that actually happens. And most of it in the United States occurs in the Northwest. And so this is a very much a process that is driven by the timber industry, especially in the Northwest. They have to maintain the health of their forests and replant forests in order for more lumber to be grown. Because if you think about it, like even in your own house, there's wood everywhere. We use wood all the time. So it's very much industrialized in developed countries like ours. And there's a full line of careers that you can have in silviculture or in the forestry industry. Now, I will take note, though, that you notice one of the strategies of prescribed burning or burning stuff that's left over. Let's remember that that does contribute to CO2 going into the atmosphere. And then also clear cutting an area or removing trees or any type of vegetation from an area can leave it open to erosion, soil erosion, evaporation from the soil. So there's all sorts of other environmental consequences that come from forestry services. You just have to make sure that you manage that and accommodate for those environmental effects that you're having. All right, let's take a look at some former AP environmental exam questions related to forestry. Which of the following is most likely to occur in a forested region that has recently been clear cut? Pause the video here while you read through those choices and then come back and we will go over the answer together. The answer you should have gotten is letter A. The concentration of nitrates in streams running through the region will increase. So if you think about it, all of the dead and decomposing things that are in a forest, those nutrients that are there, they are held in place when a forest is there. If you clear cut that region, all of those nutrients are going to easily run off into local waterways, such as streams that are running through the region. So any of that dirt and mud, when it rains, it'll just run right into the streams rather than being held in place like it was with the vegetation that was there. So the correct answer for that one is letter A. And here's another one from a former AP exam. Which of the following is a commercially used method for harvesting trees and is most likely to lead to a fragmented landscape with serious impacts on biodiversity? So go ahead and pause the video here, and then we will go over the answer together. And the answer you should have gotten is letter B for clear cutting. So again, it is something that is commercially used for timber harvesting. And we know that it can fragment a landscape, which causes species to be separated from one another, along with all of the other nutrient and pest implications that it has. So clear cutting was the answer for that one. All right, so let's move on to talking a little bit about fires and how fires are actually often a benefit to an ecosystem. Nowadays, we are very scared of these mega fires that are happening out west, but part of the reason why they are happening is because we were so scared of fires for so long. So surface fires are oftentimes natural ones that usually only burn the very bottom layers of a forest. So they'll pick up the shrubs and the brush and leaf litter on the forest floor. It often goes past the mature trees, though. It doesn't burn the big trees in the forest. And it actually prevents bigger fires from happening, these mega fires. It also frees up valuable mineral nutrients that are tied up in the leaf litter and into that undergrowth, while also releasing seeds for some species of trees. So some species of trees, as they're burning in the fire even and dying, they're releasing the seeds for their next generation. So they're creating their offspring as they are in the process of dying in fires. So fires are a very natural part of ecosystems, and these surface fires are generally not going to cause the level of destruction that we are seeing in our current mega fires out west. So like I said, it can release seeds from cones, like lodgepole pines are an example of that. And it stimulates the germination of certain types of seeds. So giant sequoias, which you often see with big burn scars from previous fires, but they don't die from it. They have seeds that germinate when it gets hot in the fire. And again, this can also help control certain diseases, like they were mentioning in the video, I believe it was, that you have to prevent certain diseases that come in when you have these large accumulations of brush. Crown fires are the ones that we become really concerned about. They're extremely hot and they can go from treetop to treetop, hence the name crown, and they can burn the whole forest, the whole ecosystem, really. And as a result of that, it destroys a lot of the vegetation, kills wildlife, soil erosion increases when you don't have that vegetation in place holding the soil together. And then human structures like houses and schools and all sorts of different buildings are also not immune from these fires. So crown fires are these mega fires that we are currently concerned about. And they result from the fact that we tried to put out every single surface fire that sprung up for the past 100 years or so. And we'll look at that more in the wildfire video that we watched this week. So here is a different view of each type. So the surface fires down here, they just burn up the things that are growing and accumulating down here, along with leaf litter from previous falls. And this is a crown fire where it's just burning up everything in its path. And a lot of that is fueled by this material on the ground. If you don't let these surface fires happen, this gets big and thick, and it just becomes a big matchbox for the rest of the forest. So the Smokey Bear Educational Campaign was to prevent forest fires. And so it probably saved a lot of buildings, many lives, likely saved a lot of trees, but unfortunately, it has made matters worse because you increase that accumulation of highly flammable underbrush and the smaller trees that oftentimes would be naturally cleaned out of the forest. There's also been a movement to move back to this type of wildfire management by doing prescribed burns and controlled burns, just to not only protect the old growth forests that we have, but also to protect our human structures and our human um, locations. There is actually a really good podcast. I wish we would have time to listen to it about this. It's on the How to Save a Planet podcast, and it's related to people building their houses in what's called the WUI, or the wildfire urban interface, close to where the cities and the wild lands come together. So the wildland urban interface. And that's where a lot of these mega fires are destroying houses, because they're right in the woods, but they're also close to big population centers. So if you want to, you can check that one out. It's the How to Save a Planet podcast. And then I can't remember the name of the episode, but it is about fires, about wildfires. And that is it. I guess that's the last slide here. Instead of doing a summary this time, what I want you guys to do is to go back to that video and some of those words that you wrote down. And I want you to define at least 10 of those words. So you could go to a U.S. Forestry Service site to look up those words. You can even go back to the video if you want and rewatch it to listen to the definitions and just pause in between each one. You could also just Google some of the terms. So I want you to define at least 10 of those words that you heard in the video, and that will be in place of your 10-sentence summary this week.